In this video, we're going to have a play around with a couple of things. I want to have a look at a Word document where I've done my own version of a source analysis on a secondary source. So I'm going to probably have to move this little image that I'm in here at the moment. I'm going to have to shuffle it about. You might want to hit pause a bit, and I'll put this Word document into our OneNote for you to have a look at from time to time. I'm not saying this is an ideal, an exact, a perfect source analysis. You might be able to do better, but it is a mock-up that gives you an example of what you could do. An example rather than an exemplar. It's not perfect. So I'm going to hit pause from time to time. This is the first time, so you get a sense of what I'm doing. So we're looking now at the independent source investigation template you've been given. I filled in a name, filled in the teacher's name as expected, and I've put in one of my better drafts of a key inquiry question. I've had to think about it. I'm not sure if this is where I'm exactly going yet. I'm going to allow myself the ability to adjust that as time goes on. Now, I've also thought about the order of operations in which I might do this, and I'm stealing that maths term, order of operations. I may not be able to fully develop my sub-questions until I've actually done my rationale, until I've actually done my summary, which would even come before the rationale. I may not quite be there until that final writing stage. So let's scroll down, but you can see that I've got an example of a key inquiry question there for you. And we skip over the rationale because I'm not up to that yet. That might be one of the last things I do. And I go down to my source analysis, and there's some reminders here from our ISMG that says, what should I be trying to do? Having a discerning identification of features in evidence, either primary or secondary source here, providing a detailed examination of the features of evidence from primary and secondary sources, providing informed explanations about the evidence and how they contribute to the development of a key inquiry question. I think that might come a little bit later perhaps. Evaluation, looking at making judgments about whether a source is useful and reliable, or how useful and how reliable, and so on. And then looking at how these sources might refer to different perspectives, okay? So, and using some reasoning and corroboration as I go along. Now, think about those. I've rattled through them quickly, but think about how you might be able to consider those ideas as you draft in your response, your analysis. So let's have a look. So firstly, let's not worry about this side over here. I know a lot of you will be really keen to see what I've written in my interrogation. You've probably hit pause on it already. But what I've actually done here is I've gone a snip. I've grabbed a section of actually a secondary source I had an online copy of, and I've done my reference here, my full in-text reference. By the way, I've noticed there should be a small p here, so I'll fix it straight away. Don't forget to save. All right, so here we are. How did I do that? Well, remember, using references, and I will insert various citations and so on. I might get out of that little space there so we can do it properly. Crikey, it doesn't really want to show me. I'll do this. I go manage sources the way I like to do it. I go new. Now, think about what I'm doing here. Straight away, I go show or bibliographic fields. I've got many more options I can fill in. I won't leave things out. I also, when I need to put in the name of an author, I always go into edit and I put in names in here. It's nice and easy for me as I add them in. It updates. If it's a corporate author, I make sure I check that box and type it in. It doesn't take long to get into the habit of doing this well. So let's just cancel out of here for a moment. So I've grabbed a secondary source that I felt was useful. You can pause if you like. You can have a read at the kind of thing I thought was useful in light of my key inquiry question. As soon as I put it in, I straight away do up a citation for it, and I insert the full in-text reference. On the right-hand side, in dot point, but in sentence form, I start doing my source interrogation. Now I'm going to change this view again shortly, but have a read. If you want to hit pause, have a read of what I've got in the left-hand side, have a read of what I've got in the right-hand side. Have a read, in other words, of the source, and have a read of the interrogations. Okay, I've copied and pasted into here. You can see it's an active text, that grey box. I've got in-text references in here, and so on. So now that you've seen the look of it, I'm going to do a few changes to it, which requires me to hit pause again. Okay, I've done a little bit of a reframe now so we can look at some other aspects. What I've done in my source interrogation is I've highlighted in different colours where I've used different sources in referencing. What's interesting to note here is while I've quoted from Bottoms's book, I've actually interrogated the source through using a lot of other secondary sources. I haven't really dwelled upon primary sources in this particular interrogation. I love a good secondary source. This is a good secondary source. I've got lots to say, and it can really pick up on elements of these criteria. When I'm looking at a discerning identification of the features of a secondary source, sometimes I need to use a secondary source. When I'm looking at the features of evidence in it, okay, and examining it in detail, I could pick up on the other secondary sources that guide me through. Judgments on usefulness and reliability might come from the voices in other secondary sources. So I don't see too much wrong with this. Think about what you need to do. Don't feel that you need to always have primary and secondary sources always mixed in. Do what is best for your interrogation. So the gold highlighting here, that's from the source that I'm using. The blue highlighting relates to external sources that are part of my background reading. Now, here's a little bit of a tip for you. I thought I would show you this. Down the end, I've actually got a quote by an author, Ray Evans. He's a lecturer in Queensland. He's an expert on the Frontier Wars. He's a really good source. He actually describes Bottoms's research as careful and wide-reaching, which is really cool. Helps me get a sense of reliability. Does a few good things for me. I'm in a happy space there. But how do I reference it? Ray Evans actually wrote this in the introduction, in the foreword to Bottoms's book. And this might be a little bit different for you. It's the idea of the parent-child type sources. Ray Evans is a child source within Bottoms's parent source. So let's look at how we do it. Firstly, we go to references, and I've already got Bottoms in there, so I'm going to insert Bottoms. And there it is, You Beauty. But I need to say that Ray Evans's voice, this guy's voice here, is in this book here. So the way I do that is I convert this now to static text. I can edit my citation, I can edit the source, which means I can go into the source manager, but I'm going to do this. I click inside here and I simply go in Bottoms 2013. And that source there, if you like, for the sake of argument, just so it's all consistent, I would highlight in that way. And you can then see what all of this might look like. Okay, there is a layout of a source interrogation.